Hello, my fellow writers. My name is Laura, and welcome to Learn to Writer, where we talk about the mental challenges of being a writer. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so happy to see you. And if you've been here before, may the words be ever in your favor. We're all out there working on our books. We all have a project, some sort of a work in progress, and it takes a lot longer than it feels like it should. If you're writing novels like me, we're talking years. Sometimes it's very difficult to tell that we're making progress. It feels like it goes on forever. It kind of does, because if you're spending years on something, that is a really, really long time. I'm not saying it's not. At the same time, it can get a little discouraging because it feels like, oh my gosh, we've been working on this book for years. It's never gonna get done. This is my entire life, and there's no end. Part of this video is basically just reminding you that basically everything that you do with your story is progress. I remember that one of the big things that I did for NaNoWriMo was realizing that the notes and the tangents on which I would go, it counts in creating the novel. And so I would count those words for my NaNoWriMo. Not everybody would do that. A lot of people were like, well, I'm only going to use the words that are actually for the novel. I see all of that as progress. When I sit down and I'm like, well, I need to know what the life cycle of this dragon is because I need to know how old this dragon is so that I know how powerful they are and, whatever. Writing that out is essential to the story, right? I cannot write the story without writing those notes. It's all progress. I've come up with a couple of ways that I think can really help you to feel like you're making progress even when you have a ridiculously long project like a novel that is going to take you many years. The first one actually is making goals. And I have done a video on this already on how to make good goals for yourself. But the most important part of making the goals is that you're doing it with some regularity. If you make sure that you keep track of those, keep those in a specific place, mine are all in a Discord where I chat with my accountability buddy, you can then look back at those and be like, look at all these goals that I made. I wanted to work on these chapters. I worked on those chapters. I wanted to fix the motivation of my one character. I fixed the motivation of my character. And so over time, those goals are okay, I have been moving forward. I have made goals for myself. I have accomplished those goals. So the story is moving forward, even though I can't necessarily see it, especially when you're kind of in the middle. You're working your way through, and then you have to do a lot of editing to further the story, and when you do a whole bunch of editing, it really doesn't feel like much is happening, but it is. It's getting better each time. One of the things that I do sometimes is I keep old drafts of my stories. I do not continually edit the same files. I will get to a certain point where I run through the entire story and edit it up to that point. And then I'll go back and start over. If I've made some sort of significant discovery, because I'm a discovery writer, in that pass, I will create a new draft, which means that the old draft stays the same, and then the new draft, I start editing that one, and that means that I don't lose the earlier copies. That comes in handy for me, number one, because sometimes I make changes and then realize that those changes were bad, and so then I want to roll back to an earlier copy. Number two, just seeing that I am on version 5 or 6 of the story means that I know that I'm making progress. This, of course, comes down to how it is that you do writing. But, if you just have one file that is the copy of your story, and then you just continually edit that, you don't really see that progression so much. If you do only have one story, though, you can always go back and look at what the created by date is. And you could be like, oh my gosh, that was so long ago. I guess that doesn't really help with making progress, but it definitely shows that you've spent a long time on it. If you want to start making versions like I do so that you can be like, oh, I'm on version 7, you can give that a try. It's kind of nice to be able to see that number go up because it feels like progress. You also want to legitimately celebrate notable milestones. For a long time, I would write and then it would be like, oh, I finished this many chapters, okay. Oh, I finished my 0 draft, okay. No, I got to the point where it was when I got to the end of my 0 draft and I legitimately wrote the end, even though it's only the 0 draft, I'd be like, yay, we're going out to dinner, it's so cool, I have finished my 0 draft, right? feels a little silly because you're like, it's only the zero draft. Like, do you know how much work I still have to do before I get to anything that anybody can see? Yes, I actually do know how much work it is. But you still want to celebrate that. There's that scene. If you have that scene where you're just like, oh my gosh, this scene, it will not fall in line and the characters won't do this, they won't do that. Once you finally get it, because you will, once you finally get it, more celebration. I have finally gotten this scene. It is amazing. It is wonderful. It might still change. I'm not saying that this is the perfect forever done draft, whatever. But like, once you finally get it working, celebrate that. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's a big deal because you make a big deal about it. I, myself, am giving you permission to make a big deal out of your milestones in your story, right? This is not like, I've finished one sentence, yay! That's a little bit much. But you have your goals. Whatever your goals are should be reachable in a week. You can have slightly bigger goals, like I have a goal of, in the next month, I'm going to finish editing these chapters. And then you give yourself the tiny goals that work up toward that. But then once you hit that milestone of, I said I was these 12 chapters, and now I've edited these 12 chapters, that's when you give yourself some sort of a celebration. And a lot of this is, in order to notice progress, you have to notice. You kind of have to go out of your way to be like, I have specifically gotten to this point, and I am going to acknowledge and celebrate that I have gotten to this point. Now, that being said, a couple of caveats. One of those is, yes, notes and world building and character description and all that kind of stuff do count as progress. Do not get stuck on those. I know a lot of people who love their world building and they would develop the entire world. That's all well and good, but if it is not stuff that you need for your book, if it's not something that is coming up, it's not something that enhances it, you do not need to do all of that work. That is just a delay. And I can't tell you how much world building that is. I can't say, if you do 50 pages of world building, that's too much. This is the type of thing where you have to be honest with yourself. One of the most important things I think I learned from Mary Robinette, you only describe what the reader needs to know in that moment. Anything else, it's just extra. You don't need to do that. You're wasting words. And so it's kind of that way with world building, where like, it's really nice to know that this war happened between, whatever, and this is the timeline, blah, blah, blah. If it was an offhanded comment where somebody mentions this war was like, 50 years long or something like that, you do not need to know all of what happened in that war, unless it is legitimately like important to the story. It might be fun to write down that timeline. It is not fun for me, but some people find that fun. If it's not necessary to the story, don't do it. The other thing is, like, that was one thing. Now we're second thing. Do not let this make you think that you always have to be making progress. You have a life. You have obligations in your life. You have other things that you want to do with your life. I love writing, and I have many other things that I like doing and people that I like spending time with and all that kind of stuff. So if you go a week or a couple of weeks, especially around the holidays or particularly busy times at work or something like that, without making progress, that is also fine. It's not, oh my gosh, I have to be progressing all the time or everything is worthless, right? At the same time, don't let it sit forever. Again, this is like the world building thing. I can't tell you exactly how much time it is that you should be spending on your hobbies as opposed to your writing, as opposed to your work. This is a thing that you have to figure out for yourself. It's going to be different for everyone, but you want to be aware that there is a line. You do not need to be progressing your story all the time, and you don't want to completely leave it by the wayside. You don't want to do world building forever, but you also don't want to never do world building, because why else do you write fantasy if not for the world building? Remember that writing a novel, writing any kind of long form writing piece, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. I mean, you can treat it like a sprint if you do NaNoWriMo, but please don't hurt yourselves, right? Treat it like a marathon. The most important thing is to acknowledge that it's going to take a long time, and plot out that course, using goals, and celebrate the goals that you do achieve. Celebrate those milestones, because that helps you makes feel like there is progress. And that way you don't ever feel like your book is just there and it is an eternal pit that you will be working on forever. The best thing that I can wish for you is that you complete this book, whatever it is you're working on, and you polish it, and you send it out to agents, and you start working on the next book. That is what I wish for you. That you can finish this project, have it, hold it in your hands, and start working on the next one, because you've got a lot of words in you, and they still need to get out. All right, so if you like this video, go ahead and like this video. If you want to hear more of my ramblings, go ahead and subscribe. You'll be able to catch up on the next videos. And I will see you in that next video. Okay, bye-bye.